Hi everyone, welcome back to Advancing with Watercolor. We're going to be painting another sky this week, a tonal study of a sky over Venice. This is the main entry to Venice, and we can see some distant buildings as well as an interesting break in the clouds which cast down a silver light. We'll be using a lot of wet into wet technique, especially in the beginning to get the sky started, and then later on using dry technique to paint things such as boats and architecture. There's a PDF linked in the description below if you'd like to see a stage-by-stage breakdown. Anyway, let's get busy. Let's head over to the watercolor table and start to paint skies over Venice. Well, I'm going to show you some of the highlights in painting the sky and the water surface in the mist over Venice. We're going to go through this quickly. So I'm using a big brush and I'm starting with yellow ochre, and I want to create a sort of luminosity that will eventually be covered. The majority of the sky will be covering this yellow color, but I hope that it comes through some of the clouds or some of the mist that I'm painting on top of it. So after placing the yellow ochre, I mix up a gray using neutral tint, a little bit of yellow ochre, even some jaune brilliant. And I'm using a mop brush here, which is a little different approach than I used in the tonal study. I'm using it to generate more natural shapes in the sky. And I do rely on the big wide brush to smooth things out if I need it. But I'm using this for speed and for its ability to create sort of natural shapes. Once I have this placed and the paper condition is still quite wet, I can blend it with that flat brush, as you saw. And I'll continue to sort of add and subtract in this fashion. Not too much, but I'll add and subtract a little bit until I've sort of built up the focus on the light that's coming in from the top and its direction towards the water. So these things are what I use as a guide when I'm constructing a sky in this fashion. And then I'll control the paint, the movement of the paint, because it's still quite active, by tilting the board either on its side or upside down, until I feel I have the components in place and I feel they're not going to move too much. Then I'll right the board and continue to build up another section of the painting. In this case, I'm going to move now to the area of the water, and I have the light in place above so I can more easily construct the feeling of light on the water surface. I begin in the same manner with the same color. A warm hue. This is yellow ochre that's been grayed a little bit, and I focus on that patch of light that's right underneath the light that's emanating from the top part of the painting. And I'll continue to build up the surface of the water, trying to create a feeling of a gradient. The gradient is helpful for creating depth on the water, and I'll build this up until I've sort of achieved what I would call a spotlight effect that we might see on the stage on Broadway, where you see a light above and it's falling on a very specific area of the stage and illuminating that. And you can see that starting to mature right now, where I've created a little bit of depth in the water. The area of light above is well defined, and the area that the light is falling on is achieved as well. So at this point, the sky above is not going to drift too much, and I can dry off the painting and then proceed to the second stage. Here's what it looks like. So we're ready to move on to painting this in real time. So let's pick up our brushes and start to focus on painting the sky on this painting of Mist over Venice. This is the final painting of a mist in Venice, and we're painting with a more colorful palette this time. Let's start. Okay, so I'm mixing on my palette with that same big brush, a little bit of yellow ochre to my jaune brilliant. I don't mind using a little white to give me a lighter, warmer color. A lot of water. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah. And as it comes closer to the sunny area, a little more water. So we're already starting to create that gradient. Just a little water. I'll keep it nice and wet. Like that. More yellow ochre below. Right down to the horizon. And just keep that nice and moving. I'm going to add just a little more of that yellow ochre. I like the way it kind of comes out here and there. Okay. Good. Now I'm going to try this time with a little bit of a mop brush. Mixing up a gray, a little bit of yellow ochre with that gray, a little bit of white, trying to achieve sort of a silvery feel to this. Like that. And yeah, I'm dropping it in. Watching it move. And put it in a few places. And I'm going to take this big brush and kind of blend it in. A little different way of working. Good. Let's continue. Slightly more diluted. Just water through here. Yeah, I kind of like that punchy effect a little better. I just want a little more intensity. Here and there. See it drift a little more. Oops. Okay. I'm just asking the paint to kind of run down here so that I have a slightly lighter horizon. All right, this is close enough for me. As we did last week, it's sky part can be problematic because we're doing it the very first thing. You know, we're kind of trying to finish this sky in one go, and a lot of things are happening. We're trying to manage those things, wet on wet, and so it's a rather difficult process. So I'm going to take now that same yellow ochre, warmish hue, put some of that into the ground, not ground, water. A little more. And isolate that whitish area. Carefully here. Okay. I think we're just a little darker. Now it floods back up. All right, and I'm gonna let it dry like this. A lot of flipping about, but I'm trying to keep a little bit of a graded quality to that water, as well as some lighter color to the horizon above the buildings. That's pretty satisfying. But I see I need to add just a little bit more to the foreground. I think it's still too watery. Oh well. Yep. Have to commit. No, more yellow. While it's wet, we can manipulate it. Ooh, that's pretty. Let's go through the highlights now of stage 2, working on the mist over Venice. We're working on a sheet that's dry. You can see the spotlight effect that we've created. And first thing I want to do is to now work on the city of, well, it's not the city, but it's the Tower of San Giorgio and the church that surrounds it. Very distinctive, iconic building in the Venetian landscape. I'm using a medium strength gray that's basically mixed out of the same colors, those being yellow ochre and neutral tint and a little bit of jaune brilliant. And you can tell I'm using a small brush that has a good point. I think it's imperative to get a fairly realistic representation of these buildings before, well, to make it recognizable and to give it a sense of scale. So I'm building in the tower now of San Giorgio and extending outward from this sort of central area, going towards the right and going towards the left as I build up the stage. I think it's useful to vary the thickness of the paint at this point also, so that it feels like the tower is being enveloped in a little bit more of the mist, or as the structure moves away from us, it's getting a little lighter. As it moves to the right-hand side, it's getting a little darker. These sorts of small variations in this wash contribute a lot to the overall feeling of mist in the air, or sort of a dense quality to the atmosphere. Some important strokes as we come to the edge of the island here, and there's some boats that are parked, and we see the masts of ships and so on. And then as we go towards the left, we connect it to the left side basically through placing a couple of vaporettos that are moving towards that direction, and another, just a small indication of what's on the left part of the city, the left part of the painting. And this looks pretty good. I'm feeling like we need to now place a darker vaporetto towards the middle ground here. And we're going to paint this one a little darker because it's coming forward in the picture. It's truly not that much lower than the rest of the scene, but even a little bit of making the bottom of the boat a little lower than the horizon and letting the canopy rise higher in the horizon. This helps to it makes the boat feel closer to us. So we can do that by position, by size, and also by strengthening the darkness, making it a darker boat. That's going to make it feel like there's atmosphere and space between this vaporetto and the distant tower of San Giorgio. I'm using some dry brush here to realize the texture or the surface of the water. Some waves that are catching the light, some are in shadow. Using dry brush here with a little darker gray is probably the best way to do that. I want to maintain the highlight for as long as I can, but I will shape that a bit as the painting matures. I'll move into it and soften some of the edges or add some dry brush, all in effect to capture that feeling of spotlight effect and the light that's drifting towards us on the water in front of San Giorgio. And this is basically how we finish the painting. So let's pick up our brushes and paints, and let's start to paint this second half together, the mist over Venice. Of our painting of Mist over Venice. You see me mixing up a little bit of color for creating the profile of the city. I'm adding just a little bit of jaune brilliant, a little bit of yellow ochre, neutral tint, water. I want to make the right guess in the color. Okay, that should do. I'm going to start by painting the larger elements first, and then I'll add the extensions or the beautiful edges of the architecture. I'm going to leave a few little whites here too. Using a sablette brush. Details. I'm trying to have fun with these details. Let's paint the tower. And I'm going a little lighter up above. Very good. Now we can build it out. I'm going to go slightly darker on this side. Slightly darker. Then a little bit lighter as it moves out. I'm looking for verticals, but I'm varying the verticals. Spacing, height, that's important. Now we put Vaporetto slightly below the horizon. The canopy is above, but the Vaporetto itself below the horizon. It's a very small one in the distance, but that looks a little, I'm going to put just a little version of different boat, a little jetty of land here. I'm going to paint now a darker mixture of the same hues, a little bit of neutral tint, a little bit of yellow ochre, just a touch of that jaune brilliant, and I'm going to paint the bottom of the larger, closer vaporetto. So the composition, I like it. You know, it looks good. Now we do the dry brush. We need to think about the dry brush and how to, you know, break up this flat white there. Our gradient really didn't dry very well. It's a nice tone, but I was hoping it would be a little darker in the front. In any case, I'm looking to my small mop brush. That is very well used. I'm creating another gray here, not too dark. Let's start to just see how it looks if we come in here. It looks okay. We can take, you know, a piece of scrap paper. This can be useful if we want to take some of the paint out and get that sort of texture like this. We can use the paper towel for the same effect. I'm going to mix up a big puddle of this. Basically the same hues. A little more water with this one. Okay. Take out some of the color. And start to create some horizontal strokes. Leaving little spaces, and I kind of run into that area where there's a little bit of brightness. Like this. The brush is running out of paint, so I take advantage of that and create a little passage here. And it gradually runs out of paint and allows me to really have some very faint but important marks because they just give a hint of the surface. Maybe add some darker touches through here. Look at my brush is all feathered up, so maybe take advantage of that and add a few darker marks into the marks that are still drying. And step back, look at it again. Okay, then we start the same process again. On the left side, a little more water, a little lighter on the left side. Take out some of the paint. Thought it was lighter. It'll dry lighter. Nice horizontal marks to give you a feeling of the waves. As the brush runs out of paint, we take advantage of that texture. Blend a little bit. take just a wet brush and soften some of this. So we have a little trail of light through here, soft light. Just lifting a little bit. Right. Refine these marks just somewhat. Right. And when you achieve a point where you can say, that's pretty close, then do something else. That something else may be, a few touches of color, darker color. I feel I can go a little darker, for example. The Vaporetto, just a little touch. Where it meets that light. So that it comes forward just a little bit. Few marks where there might be larger waves. And this is showing me we can actually get a little darker. Pull that boat forward. I don't know if I can adjust this or not. I'm going to try and adjust it to see. If I can go just a bit paler behind the Vaporetto, I can make it come out a little more. So I take a little water. Blend it in. But it's also making the pigment a little lighter. So It should dry a little lighter, and I can place a darker canopy there. Let's lighten up this line a little bit here. Taking just some water. And then with the dry brush, I pull out that edge a little bit. Okay. I'm going to just finish this with a few darker touches of waves and so on through here. To bring it forward. Over here a bit. Almost flatten this corner because it has the effect of sort of vignetting our scene, which is good. As the paint leaves the brush, I can make some smaller touches, drier touches for texture. I know it's not a very colorful painting, but it's interesting how the tonality creates the atmosphere, creates the depth. Okay, I'm going to take a smaller brush and adjust some of the darks that I placed, such as this vaporetto. It's not really. If there were a gondola here, it's really super tiny. Let's try a few channel markers, in which case we want to have the strokes look good. So I'm mixing up some of the same hue. I put it this way because it's a little more ergonomic for me. I can rest my hand and go up and down. Let's put one here. See how that looks. Very Venetian. They do get paler as they move towards the back, so we add water or we add a little white